Okay, here we go. We're going to sum up the presidency of Andrew Johnson. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 reasons why historians state that Andrew Johnson was a misfit for the presidency. Okay? So historians have stated that there are 5 reasons why Andrew Johnson was considered a misfit for the presidency. Okay? 5 reasons that historians believe that Andrew Johnson was a misfit for the presidency. Number 1, he was a Southerner who did not understand the North. He was a Southerner who did not understand the North. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Number 2, he was a Tennessean who earned the distrust of the South. He was a Tennessean who earned the distrust of the South. What does that mean? He was a Tennessean who earned the distrust of the South. What's another way you could say that? He was a Southerner who earned the distrust of the South. He was from Tennessee, a southern state, and had earned the distrust of the South. They did not trust him. Number 3, he was a Democrat who was never accepted by the Republicans. He was a Democrat who was never accepted by the Republicans. He was a Democrat who was never accepted by the Republicans. What might be the 4th reason? Think about it. How did he get into office? So he was not elected president by who? The people. Okay? So he was a president that had never been elected by the people. They had no choice in him being president. He was a president that had never been elected. And this is kind of a simple one, but this is what historians say is the 5th reason that Andrew Johnson was a misfit for the presidency. He was the wrong man in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was the wrong man in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was the wrong man in the wrong place at the wrong time. What's that? That's right. And that happens to people. You know, he's the wrong guy to be president during the Reconstruction. That's basically what he's saying. Now, is Reconstruction completed when Andrew Johnson leaves office? No. So the man that's going to be responsible to finish up the Reconstruction process is going to be General Ulysses S. Grant, who is going to be elected President of the United States in 1868, which we'll talk about next. So the man that's going to be responsible to end Reconstruction, to get it taken care of and finalized for this country, will be Union General Ulysses S. Grant, who is going to be elected President of the United States in 1868, which is our next subtopic. The election of 1868. Well, interesting enough, in the election of 1806, the Republicans were looking for a candidate to bring honor back to the presidency. Did a lot of Republicans agree with Lincoln? Not a lot, but did they agree with Johnson? Not at all. So they're looking to bring back someone that would bring honor back to the presidency, that bring back to the office someone honorable that could get the country back on sound footings. Were they looking for experience or somebody honorable? Honorable. And because of that, they turned to General Ulysses S. Grant, Civil War hero, to be the Republican candidate for president in 1868. And again, he wasn't chosen because he was very good politically. He was chosen because they wanted a hero, or they wanted someone honorable to represent the party. He had absolutely no political experience, 0. But who's he popular among? Which people mainly? You think he's popular in the South? No, but he's popular in the North, okay? The man that Grant chose as his vice presidential running mate was Schuyler Colfax, who was the Speaker of the House of Representatives at the time. So that was probably a pretty good choice because Grant had no political experience, so he went out and got the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Very prestigious position, a fellow by the name of Schuyler Colfax, and he ran with Grant on the Republican ticket in 1868. So Grant went out and got someone with experience. Speaker of the House, Schuyler Colfax. So it'll be Grant and Colfax representing the Republican Party in the election of 1868. The Democrats chose a former governor of New York, a very wealthy former governor of New York, by the way, by the name of Horatio Seymour. So the Democrats picked for their presidential candidate, former governor of New York, a very wealthy man by the name of Horatio Seymour. Kind of interesting though, he's a Democrat, but where's he from? New York, so it's from the North. Okay, so they weren't stupid either, right? They're trying to kind of make this thing work by getting someone among the Democratic Party that actually was a Northerner. Okay, so the Democratic Party countered with their presidential candidate Horatio Seymour, who was a very wealthy former governor of New York. Now Seymour chose as his vice presidential running mate a former congressman from Missouri by the name of Francis P. Blair Jr. Francis P. Blair Jr., former congressman from Missouri, which meant that he was a member of the House of Representatives. So a former congressman from Missouri, Francis P. Blair Jr. will run with Horatio Seymour on the Democratic ticket. So for the Republicans, for president, former General Ulysses S. Grant. For vice president, Schuyler Colfax, Speaker of the House. The Democratic Party counters with a presidential candidate by the name of Horatio Seymour, who was a wealthy former governor of New York. And for vice president, a former congressman from Missouri, Francis P. Blair Jr. Now this is kind of interesting. In the popular vote in this election, which is everybody's vote, it was very, very close. Very close. Matter of fact, nearly 6 million people voted, and Grant won by just 309,000 popular votes out of 6 million, which is about 5%. So he only won by like 5% in the popular vote. Out of 6 million, approximately 6 million popular votes cast, Grant wins by 309,000, or about 5%. But what counts in an election? Electoral votes. I think I've told you this before. If Wyoming has a population of, what's the population of Wyoming? Anybody know?
500,000.
500,000. So if 499,999 people vote for me, and one person votes for Hannah, I still only get 3 electoral votes. You see what I'm saying? So you can see how popular vote skews. So it was a close election among the people's feelings, but in the Electoral College it was much farther apart. Grant had 214 electoral votes to Seymour's 80. So it was 214 to 80 in the electoral vote, and as a result, Ulysses S. Grant becomes the 18th President of the United States. Okay, and that'll take us into our last subtopic of this test material, which will be a profile of President Ulysses S. Grant. I'll tell you a few things about him. Maybe. And they ring twice. Hey, what's happening? You do? Okay. Okay, we'll tell her. We'll tell her to get on the website and pick these notes up. Okay, thanks. Okay, profile on President Ulysses S. Grant. He was actually the oldest of 6 children. The oldest of 6 children. He had 2 brothers and 3 sisters, but he was the oldest. 2 brothers and 3 sisters, but he was the oldest. Well, in 1823, the Grant family moved to Ohio, where his father owned a tannery and a little bit of farmland. So in 1823, the Grant family moved to Ohio, where Grant's father owned a tannery and a small amount of farmland. What's a tannery, Mason?
It's where they tan hides for, in that case, probably like clothes.
Clothing and hats. What's that?
They like spank people. I'm just kidding.
No, not a tannery. How do you do it, Kyle? Anyway, as a boy, Ulysses became an excellent horseman. And he was often sent by his father on business trips because of the tannery as a young boy. So he's very responsible. He was an excellent horseman, and because he was good on a horse, his father often sent him at a young age on business trips concerning the tannery. Well, he attended schools in Georgetown, Ohio, just like you attended schools, and he finally graduated from high school on time in 1839. So he graduates from Georgetown High School in Georgetown, Ohio in 1839. And his father was concerned about what he was going to do with his future. Well, his father had learned through a mutual conversation that his neighbor's son had been dismissed from the United States Military Academy at West Point. Okay? Ulysses S. Grant's father hears that his neighbor's son has been dismissed from the United States Military Academy at West Point. So what his father did when he got that information is he got a hold of his local congressman and he asked if he would appoint his son Ulysses as a replacement for the young man that was dismissed. So Ulysses S. Grant's father finds out that his neighbor's son has been dismissed from the United States Military Academy in West Point. When he finds that out, he asks his local congressman if he would consider appointing his son Ulysses as a replacement for the young man that was dismissed. The congressman agreed, and as a result, Ulysses would be heading for West Point Military Academy after his graduation from high school. Kind of a lucky break. Doesn't get in unless his neighbor's son gets in trouble, and maybe the course of history changes. I mean, who knows? Well, at West Point, Grant was considered an average student, but he ranked very high in mathematics and horsemanship at the academy. So he was considered an average student, but he did rank high in both mathematics and horsemanship. Well, after spending his 4 years at West Point, he graduated in 1843 from West Point. And what happens? Does anybody know when you graduate from West Point, what do they do? Do you end up being an infantryman or a cavalryman? What do you come out of West Point as? Officer. And his rank was second lieutenant when he came out of West Point. So when you leave the military academies, you come out an officer. Second lieutenant. And then what happens after you get your rank? Well, what do? You sit there. You get assigned to some sort of a military branch. And he happened to be assigned to what was called the 4th Infantry Regiment near St. Louis, Missouri. So he was assigned to the 4th Infantry Regiment, stationed near St. Louis, Missouri. So what's he going to be commanding? Infantry soldiers, right. So, I repeat this many times, so just relax. Okay, he was assigned to the 4th Infantry Regiment, and they stationed that regiment near St. Louis, Missouri. So what he's going to be doing is he's going to be commanding in some way, shape, or form infantrymen, guys that march on the ground. Remember, cavalrymen do what? Ride horses. Okay, perfect. Okay? So he's stationed to St. Louis, Missouri. Well, during that time, he met a pretty young lady by the name of Julia Dent. Met a pretty young lady by the name of Julia Dent. She was actually the sister of one of his former classmates. Where? No? West Point. Okay? So during his time in St. Louis, he met a young lady by the name of Julia Dent, who was the sister of one of his former classmates at West Point. Well, girls, the couple fell in love and were married in 1848. Fell in love and were married in 1848. Everything's just going to be hunky-dory there in St. Louis, Missouri, except for the fact that Lieutenant Grant was then transferred to Fort Vancouver in the Oregon Territory. So not long after their marriage, Lieutenant Grant was transferred to Fort Vancouver in the Oregon Territory. Now, if you were going to take your family with you to your new assignment, what did you have to do? Pay for that. Okay, they were paying for you to get there. They weren't paying for your family to get there. But because he didn't have a lot of money, and Army pay wasn't that great, his wife and infant son, which came about, were left back in St. Louis. So Lieutenant Grant was transferred to Fort Vancouver in the Oregon Territory, but his wife and infant son were left behind as Army pay would not support a family at that time. Well, he became lonely and depressed, and what did he start doing, Mason? Started drinking heavily. So he got depressed and lonely without his family there, without his wife and son. Became depressed, and it resulted in some heavy drinking. Well, in 1853, he was promoted to the rank of captain. But even at that higher rank, he still couldn't afford to have his family come out to Fort Vancouver. Okay? So in 1853, Grant was promoted to the rank of captain, but even at that higher rank, which meant a little bit more money in Army pay, his family still had to stay behind. And he stayed there a year until 1854. He was missing his family too much, so he resigned from the military and returned back to St. Louis to his family. So in 1854, because he was missing his family so much, he simply resigned from the military at the rank of captain and returned back to St. Louis. Well, what did he do in St. Louis? He worked a small farm that was given to him by his father-in-law. So he worked a small farm that was given to him by his father-in-law. And he kind of enjoyed farming. The problem was he wasn't very good at it. And so the farming business failed. Okay? It failed. So although he enjoyed the farming life, he wasn't very good at it, and it was a failure. And so in 1859, what did he do? Sold the farm and went to work in a relative's real estate office, believe it or not. So he sells the farm in 1859. Selling the farm is always better than buying the farm, if you know the expressions. He bought the farm for it. Okay, he sold the farm in 1859, went to work in a relative's real estate office. Well, what else do you have, what do you have to do in a real estate office besides sell homes, sell property? What's that? Well, you might not buy it, you're gonna sell it, but what else might you be in besides the selling business? You might be in the what business? You know, somebody doesn't wanna buy something, what do they do? Rent. So he was also in the renting business. Well, he got fired from that job because he wouldn't go collect the rents. So he goes to work for a relative's real estate business, but he gets fired for not collecting the rents on certain properties that they were renting at the time. So he's having a hell of a time, isn't he, when he gets back? Well, then he was hired for a job in the United States Customs House. He was hired for a job in the United States Customs House and then was promptly fired. So he goes to work for the United States Customs House and then gets fired from that job too. What's his dad do? No, his dad.
Skoden dies.
He's a tannery. So what he does is his dad offers him $50 a month to go work in his leather goods store. Okay? So he's kind of going full circle. So after he gets fired from the United States Customs House, he takes a job at his father's leather goods store for $50 a month. Well, by that time, what was beginning in this country? Civil War. And when Lincoln asked for 75,000 volunteers, Grant's life had been so poor since he left the military, he was eagerly willing to be one of those volunteers, and that's what he does. So when the Civil War started in 1861, and President Lincoln asked for 75,000